Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Let me in.
Hey, this is Toxic Reign Scandal featuring TBK, the Turnbuckle King. Got another good one for you guys today. This is recent news, the update on the Vince McMahon lawsuit. We're here to talk about when we thought the saga was over. More parties involved in the Vince McMahon lawsuit. What do I mean by that? WWE power brokers, Nick Khan, Stephanie McMahon, others identified as part of the Vince lawsuit. So there is a current interview that is by YouTube channel Law and Crime. They talk about the whole story of Nick, Stephanie, others that are a part of the scandal. I will react to that right now. Much credit to the Law and Crime channel, but they're going to talk about what happened, and then also during this whole analysis of what they say, I'm going to have my own analysis myself off the reaction and what other factors could play a part in this of the whole thing. Pretty much going to see what else is going to happen next, what is going to move forward with this whole situation. As we know that there have been many stories tied to this. This has been going on since what started back in 2022 of this whole scandal, of the Hush scandal, and it has been going nonstop since January with Janel Grant, Brock Lesnar. But now we got, Stephanie and Nick Khan and others involved. So it's going to be definitely some dirty laundry that will be unveiled here. But other than that, we're going to get into it, see what they have to say, and I will react to it and give my own analysis on this whole situation. Let's tune it in. We are here at the locker room. Get your seat at the lockers. It's going down. So let's get to that shortly. All right, let's go in and see.
Naming names, attorneys for the woman suing WWE founder Vince McMahon, accusing him of sex trafficking, are also accusing his lieutenants of being aware of what was happening and helping to cover it up. Two people who broke the news about the names are here. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Janel Grant filed that explosive lawsuit accusing Vince McMahon of offering her a job that was really a cover for her being a sex slave. Grant has accused McMahon of coercing her into violent sex acts and trafficking her to other men and forcing her into threesomes with his right-hand man, John Laurinaitis. Now, 4 people identified as corporate officers numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been revealed in a new report by Front Office Sports. WWE corporate officer number 1 is identified as WWE President Nick Khan. Number 2 is identified as WWE Chief Operating Officer Brad Blum. Number 3 is identified.
So the third name they mentioned is Brad Blum. So he's executive as well, but I just wanted to make sure that's the other person that was involved besides Nick and Stephanie. With that being said, let's continue on to what they have to say in the story.
It is Vince McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon. And number 4 is identified as former WWE General Counsel Brian Nurse. It's important to note that none of the 4 are accused of assaulting Janel Grant. I want to be very clear about that. They are accused by Grant's lawyer of knowing about Vince McMahon's relationship with Grant and either taking steps to cover it up or being a part of her leaving the company and the NDA she signed, along with the $3 million payment she was supposed to receive. John Pollock and Brandon Thurston broke the news about the names behind the numbers. Guys, thanks so much for coming on. First of all, tell us a little bit about why this matters, particularly when we talk about people like Nick Khan.
Well, Nick Khan is the number 1 officer currently in WWE. He's the WWE president. At the time that these events are alleged, he was the WWE president, chief revenue officer. He's a member of the board of directors. Another person whose identity is revealed here is Brad Blum, who is the current WWE Chief Operating Officer. So for starters, these are the two executives who we've learned more about in terms of what Janel Grant is alleging. Those two people are still very much involved with leadership in WWE.
This story, it is one of power that Vince McMahon was able to have in this position, not just from his voting shares, but within this culture at WWE. And this, does shine a light on 4 individuals that had significant titles within the company and what options were at their disposal, seeing a relationship that at the very least could be seen as inappropriate without even getting into all of the allegations in the complaint.
And let's talk about a little bit about what's alleged in the complaint as far as the names go. As far as Blum goes, I mean, Brad Blum would reach out to her. It's in, bullet point number 58. He would reach.
Close your eyes and imagine you.
Her and talk to her about this proposed job. She claims he would hardly ask her really any real questions. Then we move on to Brian Nurse.
So it says that basically Janel Grant was not hired for any skills or any qualifications. They basically used her as, as they say, basically an object to be passed around. Now, with that being said, if that's the case with the lawsuit and everything, with Nick Khan and Nurse and Brian Plum, as stated, will these guys be forced out in the near future? Will they have to be forced out? Will they be forced to resign? Will they be fired or quit in the near future? It will. I believe this may affect them later on. If there's proof that their names of knowing everything, any type of text, email, any type of documentation that proves that they knew about this prior and didn't say anything, it could cost them their job, making them, like I said, to be forced out of their position or be forced to resign, or forced out is being forced out to resign, but also maybe even getting fired. It's either two options: you're forced out to resign or fired. And this, if that's the case, this is not a good look for those executives as named, because it's a serious situation here. A lot of people's reputations on the line with this whole lawsuit. Not just Vince McMahon's, not just Joe Laurinaitis, especially not Brock Lesnar, but these guys too. So that's interesting that they did not hire Janel Grant for her looks. I mean, not for her skill. I'm sorry. They basically did hire for her looks, but not her skill set, not of any qualifications for that particular position. Let's continue.
Who was told to offer Janel Grant this job, according to her complaint, although the job hadn't been firmed up yet. So it's almost like there's this implication that all of these people kind of knew that this necessarily wasn't, that this maybe wasn't a job per se, a legitimate job, that maybe this was going to be somebody brought in who was just going to be at Vince McMahon's disposal. I mean, is that what you guys are kind of gathering here?
That's certainly the narrative that Janel Grant presents, is that she struck up a relationship with Vince McMahon, who turned out to be the CEO of WWE, and he wields a lot of power in his company at this time, at least. And he got her a job that they didn't necessarily have a fit for her in, but he's the boss, so he got to get her a job and got to get her the the benefits that go with that job, whether or not there was really a place for her, whether or not there's really a workflow for her. That is definitely her side of the story.
And she's also kind of alleging that Brian Nurse was kind of rude to her, treated her very coldly. It was almost like she's alleging that.
Now, she said that Brian Nurse was rude. When Nurse was rude to her, I believe she can sue for, I don't know, maybe some type of lawsuit for being mistreated in the workplace. I wonder, can that be another lawsuit added to this if that's the case? The question I want to know is, when she said that, can she could basically sue for that too if she wants to. You know, that's the question I want to ask you guys in the live chat right now. You know, can she be sued for mistreatment from other employees that was not intimate or anything, from other executives? I mean, I wonder if she has that written up right now, or something she plan on doing in the near future. She could also sue for that if she hasn't already, but you can't, if you're being rude to someone for no reason, just to be rude to them, that could be a lawsuit as well, in addition to all of this. So that's something to think about. I don't know if Janel Grant already got that going, but it's definitely something she will consider. So with that being said, let's continue on, and let's continue on with this whole interview.
She would walk into the room and he would be laughing and joking around with other people in this legal department where she was, supposed to be working, and that he would kind of just turn that off. Like, it was almost, he was hostile to her, is what she claims. So what does that tell us?
Well, I think it really opens it up to, speculation. And we did seek out Brian Nurse for comment, which he did not respond to us for this story. That was Janel Grant's characterization of Brian Nurse, and someone that she was working under for a period. But you look at just what we know of, in that Janel Grant a position is essentially created for her in this legal department at $75,000 a year. And then within a year, being moved up to a director position that was initially to be a VP role, and they tailored it down to a director role with the promise that a VP role would come. So it is not typical that you see that kind of a leap from $75,000 to $200,000 a year. You're seeing all these pieces here that at least, you can certainly see, if you are someone in these positions, that something is off here, but how much is known, it remains to be seen. And did that inform Brian Nurse in terms of his interactions with Janel Grant? That's for him to address.
Sure.
Jorge is
It'll eventually come out, I would think, in depositions and things like that, depending on how far this lawsuit goes. We want to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law and Crime YouTube takeover. If you've seen our videos, you know that Morgan & Morgan is a proud sponsor of ours, and that our content proves the world is not always safe. When you're hurt, it can be confusing, it can be scary, and you don't always know where to turn. Well, Morgan & Morgan gotten some 2016 to VP. She was supposed to be a VP, apparently told her, according to, that's pound 529 on your cell phone. And Brad Blum apparently told her, according to the lawsuit, hey, a leap from where you are to VP. She was supposed to be a VP, apparently. It was going to be a huge.
So is this why Nurse was being so mean to her, because of her position? Is this the case with that? Because Janel Grant was going to be a VP. She was a director VP, and she's got hired there. That is definitely something that's going to raise eyebrows within the corporation, executives along the company, and other people, especially been there for many, many years, worked their way up, and they see this young woman here who basically had no prior experience just come up and get a high position. Is that why they was rude and mean to her? But if that's the case, like I said, Janel Grant could still probably sue for Nurse for that. And I know after all this is over, Janel Grant's gonna have a huge payday for all of this. We know that that's pretty much was nepotism by Vince McMahon, and he used Janel Grant for his own pleasure. But this is not good though. And she had no prior experience and didn't have the qualifications. That's definitely something other executives are going to look at, and they're going to say this is not right at all by any means. How did this woman go from director, especially a promised position in VP for that matter? So this is not a good look. But like I said, Janel Grant already got a lawsuit out, but I don't know how much she's going to get after all this is over. It's going to be more than the $3 million that she was promised by Vince McMahon. it's going to be millions and millions of dollars. She's going to have, like I said, a huge payday after all this is over, because it is so much paper trail and there's so much dirt that's along the side of the tracks, and it's all getting exposed right now. So let's see what else more that law and crime have to say regarding this whole story.
Huge leap, you know, and they said, let's dial this down a little bit and let's put you into talent relations under John Laurinaitis, who is accused of taking part in these kind of violent threesomes with Vince McMahon with Janel Grant. So this Blum is being accused of kind of knowing exactly what was going on, but kind of tailoring jobs that could be, they didn't want to raise any red flags. She's saying that he told her this could put a target on your back if we put you in a VP position too quickly.
The impression I get from that is that if we, promote you too quickly, it'll make it more obvious what's happening here. It's hard to imagine that Brad Blum and Nick Khan didn't have knowledge that there was some sort of sexual relationship between Vince McMahon and Janel Grant. There's nothing alleged, to be clear, in the complaint that those executives had knowledge of the sexual assaults that may have been happening that are certainly alleged throughout this complaint. But they are alleged to have supported and helped Vince, keep this, what the plaintiffs say is a sex trafficking scheme to keep that going along.
And we've made that clear earlier in the show that we are not saying that any of these people took part in any of the abuse of Janel Grant or what she alleges. They're accused of being part of a cover-up. So Nick Khan also was a part, according to Janel Grant, of fashioning this NDA and this agreement where she would leave the company. She was supposed to be paid $3 million. We know she didn't get all of the money. So what does this mean for Nick Khan? Let's say this turns out to all be true. What does this mean for Nick Khan, for Brad Blum? They're still with the company. What does this mean for them in the future of WWE?
I think you're getting into territory where a lot of the complaint is communication that was relayed from Vince McMahon to Janel Grant, a number of instances that infer his conversations with Nick.
Here's one thing you need to do before you buy anything online.
And Brad Blum. So I think that you would need to substantiate that this was Vince McMahon being truthful in these conversations and what he told Janel Grant, and how involved Nick Khan and Brad Blum were privy to some of the facts and what was going on and orchestrating this. And then, kind of the confidence that these are two individuals that are still in very high, prominent leadership positions. And are they prepared that they can handle situations such as this if they were to arise? We don't have a Vince McMahon figure anymore in the company, but this is still something that you are fostering, a corporate culture that.
See, that's what I was saying earlier. That's what she asked even before I got to that point. What happens with their positions following this whole thing? Because this is going to be frowned upon, that these executives knew what was going on. They was aware of the whole situation. For Janel Grant possibly getting a VP spot, but then got moved down to work with Laurinaitis, as they stated here in Law and Crime, not to make it too obvious, but Nick Khan and Nurse and Plum are still there. Will these guys, that's why I said, will they be forced out? And they have the same concerns that I do, because that is definitely not going to be ignored. They're not going to, turn a blind eye to that. The fact we know Stephanie McMahon already, quit, and she more likely will never be back in WWE. But like I said, it's the $1 million question: will these guys still be around? So with that being said, let's continue to see what else Law and Crime have to say regarding this.
There needs to be checks and balances, and if there is some kind of grand grievance to this, there has to be people that can step in and stop this from happening. I think at the core of this complaint from Janel Grant is her stating that if those structures were in place, I would have had some protections. I had none. I had no one to go to. And did this go so unchecked, this power that Vince McMahon had, that even these executives that had high-ranking positions, did they feel that they could do anything without threatening their own job title.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could add to that.
Oh, sure.
If I could add to that, there's one scene depicted in the complaint where Janel Grant is describing a conversation that she had with Vince, where Vince is telling her a story about a conversation that Vince had with Nick Khan and Brad Blum, where Blum and Khan, according to Vince, expressed concern about the relationship with Janel and Vince, and they expressed concern, but Vince reassures them that she can be trusted, and they were eventually supportive of Vince's relationship with Janel Grant. Now, WWE has commented with some of its first comments on this story that we've had yet, and they have denied that that conversation involving Nick and Blum and Vince took place. Obviously, there's only 3 people who really know whether or not that conversation took place.
Yeah, of course.
Now, I'm starting to figure out, is this why Stephanie just up and quit following her scandal? Not just because it destroyed her dad's reputation and his name, and her name, the McMahon name as well, but also she knew a lot of stuff more than we thought she knew, and she didn't want her name tied to the whole thing. Even though she didn't do anything, like they said on Long Crime, she still had awareness of what was going on the whole time. And also, not just this situation, but other situations like the Ashley Mazzaro case. They said she knew about what happened with her, which led to her demise when she, passed away in 2019. It was all this stuff personally with Stephanie getting to her of what was going on, what her dad was doing for many, many years within the corporation of WWE, with the foundation that's been built by the McMahon family, start with her grandfather, Vince's dad, and, of mistreatment of people being, essayed, lawsuits, you name it. And I believe this is why she quit, but this means that Triple H knew about it too. Does this mean he knows it all? I believe so. I would say Triple H knows everything. Now, for the record, I'm saying this, I'm a fan of Triple H. I'm not saying Triple H did anything involving Janel Grant. I'm not saying physically he did anything. I'm saying that Triple H knew, he was aware of all of this stuff going on. There's no way he's married to Stephanie and not know all the stuff that was going on during this whole time. That's all I'm saying for the record. And I said this before when the news broke of the lawsuit with Vince, resigned from TKO. But I believe that Stephanie quit, Triple H knew, and I believe all this stuff is not just them quitting, but it got to them mentally too. Look what has happened. Stephanie quit, came back, and Triple H got sick. Remember, he had the heart issue. I believe it's not just the job itself, but being around the environment of knowing what's going on, especially what Vince McMahon was doing. So all this stuff it gets to people personally and mentally as well. With that being said, let's get back to Law and Crime. It's not that much more left in this whole interview of what they're doing. It's like a few minutes left, but I'm gonna let them wrap it up.
And one of them is no longer with the company. He resigned. He's under criminal investigation. I mean, that's another piece of this, guys. The Wall Street Journal reported in the last month and a half, that Vince McMahon is under criminal investigation by the feds for sex trafficking. I know that was a Wall Street Journal exclusive. Have you heard anything more about that?
Recordings just got better.
No, we are certainly with great interest, following this, because that is just to frame it, this is a civil suit, and that's the extent of things with the complaint from Janel Grant. But if we're talking about a federal investigation, especially as it pertains to sex trafficking, I mean, that is something that there could be an enormous can of worms that is opened, not just from this case, but if you are going historically in WWE, that they had an enormous scandal involving several underage ring boys in the early 90s. So this is the extent of what a federal investigation could uncover. You could only speculate at this point of how damaging it could be, and Vince McMahon being at the center of that.
And for any reassurance about, there's definitely an investigation happening. That's not just something that's been reported on background and been reported by outlets, but that there's an SEC filing that came out last year in the summer that disclosed that there is an investigation, and that Vince McMahon's his phone was there's a subpoena executed on him, and a search was executed on him. So there's definitely an investigation happening.
There is an investigation, and we want to be clear that no criminal charges have been filed, but a grand jury apparently has been impaneled, a federal grand jury, and they've been investigating this. Just finally, guys, Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon's daughter, she was a huge part of WWE for many years. She is revealed to be corporate officer number 3. And she is not really mentioned a lot through this civil suit. I think there's like 1 or 2 mentions of her. And she was described as, motioning to Janel Grant at maybe a meeting or 2 and saying, come sit by me. So what role does Stephanie McMahon potentially play in this at all? I mean, is Janel Grant implying that Stephanie McMahon was also aware of this relationship and was condoning it, or what is your take on that?
She's definitely saying that Stephanie McMahon had knowledge of other inappropriate sexual conduct that Vince was engaging in, allegedly. But like you said, there's very little that's mentioned here about WWE corporate officer number 3, who is Stephanie McMahon. And I would be very interested to know, what her thoughts are, what her memories are of these events that are described, and what knowledge she may or may not have had. We did reach out to her, and I feel similarly about officer number 4, who is Brian Nurse, who may have, been opposed to what was going on.
Very interesting, guys. Well, we really enjoyed reading.
Okay, that's the end of that interview. Like I said before, it summed up everything. Stephanie McMahon, like I said, her name was very little mentioned. She just had knowledge, like I said before. I believe that's why she quit like she did. She didn't want to be under that pressure anymore, and she just want to focus on being a wife and mother. And also, it made no sense for her to be around. You got her husband, Triple H, already in executive position, and since then, Triple H is now currently the head of creative. And I believe that this is best that Stephanie did leave. Now, do I see Stephanie McMahon ever coming back to WWE following all of this? No, I don't see that happening, because she doesn't need to come back. And the name of the McMahon as we know it is just in ruins. It's just destroyed. If we thought the McMahon name wasn't destroyed before, it's definitely destroyed now. Not just Vince, but Stephanie. And then, of course, the whole, Shane up and leaving. It's just sad, because, like I said earlier, Vince McMahon's dad, Vince Sr., did so much to build WWE to get where he wanted to be before he passed in 1984, to see where it is today. And now the McMahon name is in ruins. But, I'm glad. I don't believe Stephanie physically did anything either, like I said, with Triple H. But definitely the McMahon name is done. And Triple H, hopefully I don't see anything happening to him. But I do know that he knew what was going on. And like I said before, this saga is not over. It is just the begin. It's more and more that's going to be unveiled. I believe so. Will Nick Khan stick around much longer after this? Who knows? But I just know that this saga is far from over. And I believe some more stuff's going to be revealed, of whoever regarding this whole scandal, especially with Vince being under investigation, meaning he can't move, he can't do anything. He even moves around funny. That's it for him, definitely. But thank you all, guys, for coming out when we thought the saga was over. This is talking about more parties involved in the Vince McMahon lawsuit. WWE power brokers Nick Khan, Stephanie McMahon, Nurse, Brian Plum are identified as parties of Vince's lawsuit. Soon, 2 videos will pop up for toxic reign scandal. One will be, is she being loyal to her husband? Second is, what do these men share in common? Until then, it is you